All right, welcome back to Appalachia. Thank you all for joining us. Chuck Corey here, joined as always, Big John Eisner, who is bragging about getting boosted this week. That's exciting. You're getting your booster shot.
Yeah, Moderna for life.
Moderna for life. So you took the advice of Big Bird, it sounds like.
I did. Actually, I'm a little. I am for the first time a little worried about the booster. I'm not gonna lie, and the reason being is that there has with Moderna for was like 18 to 29-year-old men. They have had some like heart inflammation and stuff like that. So I'm a little worried about that. But besides that, I'm okay.
Yeah, you're going to be fine because you know what? Your heart is always inflamed on this show with passion, right?
Well, honestly, if Jack 3D didn't knock my heart, I'll be all right.
Okay. I'm just, I don't know if this is breaking the fourth wall, but I'm going to be honest. I was very surprised when you got COVID earlier this year because I assumed that Jack 3D gave you immunity. And so I
I
was like,
thought so.
shit, man, if that can't give you
That's how you know
that
COVID is so serious.
that's how I knew. I was like, I really
You had to be careful. Yeah.
because I was careful, but I was like, well, I've had Jack 3D in my veins. It's kind of like the chemicals from DuPont. It stays there for your whole life. So, I
Right.
thought I was immune. Anyway,
Nope.
the reason I mentioned Big Bird, we don't want to talk about it, but Big Bird tweeted out that he got the vaccine, and that caused,
Yeah.
of course, a right wing backlash. Because why wouldn't it? Any chance to dogpile on Big Bird, a cartoon bird? Why not?
He's not cartoon.
Anthropomorphic. Sorry.
Yeah. Why don't you get your terms right and respect the bird?
Respect the bird. Yeah, I respect the bird a lot. I respect it too much. That's why I get in trouble when I'm driving because I flip people off too much. Hey yo,
Heyo.
that was dumb. All right. So on today's show, we're going to be talking about the strikes happening across the country and in Appalachia as part of what was once Strike-tober, right? And now
Yeah.
is Strikes-giving. I don't know. We're going to keep with these monikers, but let's roll with it. But
I don't
first,
really like strikes. I don't like strikes giving as much because they're not really. They're trying. It's more like the companies are trying like strikes taking. The companies just take.
so what's something we could come up with to represent November? Because like Strike Vember, I don't know if it like Strike
Man,
Friday, Black.
that's tough too. That's tough too. Maybe we'll think about it throughout the show and something will come up.
Yeah, we'll think about it. Well, this episode's gonna be called Strike-A-Lachia, so
There you
uh
go.
yeah. But first, by popular demand from our fan base, I'm reviving from the dead a segment that is, I think,
What is it?
a cult classic. No, backed by popular demand, a cult classic, Data-Lachia. You know that we could not avoid talking a little bit about the Virginia governor's race. And I'm just gonna say this right now: the Virginia whole election is not just governor's race. It's been talked about a lot. It's kind of been beaten into the ground. We're not gonna like linger on it too much, but we do have to address it. And so, John, bringing back Data-Lachia, I'm gonna hit you with
All
some
right.
numbers.
Okay.
As we always do. I point out a number and you guess what it is. Then I tell you what it is, and
Uh-huh.
then we have to talk about it. 2.9%.
Okay. 2.9%. That
2.9%. That's the number.
okay. Alrighty. I'm gonna guess that 2.9% is the percent that the Republican nominee in Virginia
Mm-hmm.
won in counties that Biden carried, like percentage that he won by in each county. I don't know.
So you're saying that Glenn Youngkin won Fairfax County?
No, I shouldn't say every county. Let me revise that. 2.9% of I don't know. This is a tough one. I'm not used to the low numbers. I'm used to the higher numbers.
Well, yeah, no. Look, Data-Lachia comes in many forms. So
Mm-hmm.
do you want to
I'm
take a
learning that.
guess? Do you want to take a guess?
2.9% is the amount that the Democratic nominee lost by in Virginia?
That's well, that's actually close. It's
Ah,
not. It's not what I was going for, but I believe that the Democratic nominee lost by around 2%,
eh,
give or take.
uh,
So you're not inherently wrong. 2.9%. That's the average. Of which Terry McAuliffe, the Democratic nominee for governor, underperformed Joe Biden
mm,
in Appalachian counties.
got it.
There you
Okay,
go.
I was kind of on the right.
In Virginia, Appalachian counties in Virginia,
I
because
was
we're
kind of in the
making
right area
you are
for Joe Biden.
you're getting warmer. You're getting warmer.
Yeah.
If I let the fish on the hook a little bit longer, you would have been able to reel
And
it
to be
in.
quite honest, I did not pay much attention. I mean, I looked at like who won, but I didn't pay much attention to any of the statistics out of Virginia. This is really I was really kind of worn out from elections from last time, so I just kind of stayed away from this.
I pulled these numbers myself because nobody did that. Uh,
Yeah.
we were the
There
only
were
people
only
interested in
two
that.
there were only two elections I paid attention to. Uh
You'll
no, I mean from 2021. I did pay attention somewhat to the governor's race in Virginia, only to see who won. I didn't pay attention to any stats. And the only other one I paid attention to was in Minnesota. Minneapolis was voting whether or not to replace its police department, which I thought was an interesting ballot measure
yeah, and they rejected it.
by a lot,
Yeah. Uh, just telling.
which not surprising. I mean, that's a big that's a big move. Like you're going to
Yeah.
scare people into voting that way. That's
s-
a given.
Right. Defund the police. Terrible fucking slogan. So, but
Bad
back
slogan.
to
Bad
back to
slogan.
Appalachia. So, other fun fact: there was only one county that Joe Biden won. And it was Montgomery County, and McAuliffe did terribly in it. So, the reason why I brought that up is Democrats got destroyed in rural counties, like they tend to do sometimes. But even this time they just got they got trounced a lot worse. And now there are so many takes on this race. I think most of them were garbage. Let me back up a second, though. For people that aren't aware, the Democrats had held the governorship for the past 4 years. Joe Biden won the state by 10 points. The Democratic nominee a year after lost the state by 2 points. That is a 12-point difference in favor of the Republican. That should be a cause for concern for a lot of reasons. The Democrats also lost the House of Delegates. They basically got their asses kicked. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. As with any election, and I've said this so many times on this show, people are too often to say, well, it's because of this, and that's why, because that makes for a good tweet. It's complicated. There's a lot of reasons why the Democrats lost in this, but my point being with bringing this up is we've got to do better in rural counties, especially in Appalachia. Democrats do, if they're ever wanting to win anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Opine.
Opine, opine.
No, it was
Yeah, I mean,
directed at
this
you.
is look. This is something that we've been. Did you just try explaining me what opine means?
Well, I didn't. I thought you were just gonna be like, "Yeah, opine, all right."
No, I just
Okay.
adding words. Uh, look, this is. I want to say that the DNC will learn from this. They won't. They will continue the same ways. Unfortunately, this is exactly. Go rewind all, back to 2020 and all of those elections where we literally predicted this would happen. And Virginia is a great example of it because Democrats are really bad at campaigning, especially in Appalachia and in somewhat rural states. I consider Virginia not to be that rural, but there are rural parts. And they always lose those areas. It's one of those things like, I, okay, I guess I could say this now, right? Uh, I I don't even know how to say this. I think Democrats are I don't know if maybe Republicans do this too, but I was worried from the very onslaught of that Democrat or that race, that governor's race, because we were getting DMs, automated DMs from those candidates on the Democratic side of the governor's
Mhm.
race in Virginia asking for money. Never, if you are a candidate, listen closely. Don't you ever think it's okay to use your Twitter followers and ask for donations through automated messages. They didn't sign up for that. They signed up to follow your campaign. They didn't sign up for your newsletter, your email list. Don't ever do that. It is shady and it makes you look desperate. And that's exactly the message that they were putting out. And guess what? It turned out to be true. They were desperate because they got their asses kicked.
Yeah, I think that. So I think there's a lot of reasons that this happened. Part of it was that I think so. There's a lot of things you can say about this. One of the things though is, and there's gonna be blame all around. There's gonna be blame about the candidate. There's gonna be blame about outreach into rural areas. There's gonna be a blame about the issues and the national environment. There's a lot of people who are Virginia voters, but they live in the DC area and think that they know about Virginia politics because they live in the DMV. And let me tell you something. I live in Fairfax County. Fairfax County is not representative of the entire state. And so people saying, well, if they'd only passed the infrastructure bill before the election, McAuliffe would have won. I'm sure that probably would have helped him a little bit, but I call bullshit on that. And so one of the reasons why is turnout, John, was up, okay, for both. If you compare it to the 2017 gubernatorial election, turnout was up for both sides, right? The Democrat turned out like 100,000 more people. Here's the thing, though. There was a 41.5% increase in turnout by the Republicans as compared to 2017. So the Republican candidate, Glenn Youngkin, turned the fuck out of people, and he weaponized the issue of education and the issue of taxes and the current economic climate to do that. That's all I wanted to say. There's a lot of blame to go around. There's a lot of issues to go around, and Democrats need to take a look at this and understand that you can't just turn out these high blue areas. You actually have to reach out to rural people and talk to them about it. And I'm not saying that the campaigns didn't do that. Like, I know there's a lot of staffers who worked really hard on this campaign, but the data doesn't yield results right now. We got to figure out what the problem is there.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I want to say like, oh man, they'll use this data in this election because it's so important, and they'll fix the things that they're facing. No, they won't. I mean, it's sad. No, they won't. Like what they're gonna do, Chuck? They're gonna look at this and go, yeah, we knew we were gonna lose this. Like that's what the DNC is gonna say. They're gonna say we knew we couldn't win this.
Well,
So
they're gonna say we needed to pass infrastructure because then we would have won.
Yeah, you're right. They will 100% say that because that's the thing. The people who are leading the Democratic Party right now are all from very, very big areas, right? Like they're all like California, New York. Those are the people who are leading the party currently. They don't actually understand what's going on here. And it shows. It shows because you know what? They know one word that affects Appalachia, and it's broadband. That's the only word that they know. They don't actually understand any infrastructure or the infrastructure that actually needs fixed here or the infrastructure that will get them a vote. Because I can tell you this, broadband is very powerful, but not everybody understands it. And two, not everybody wants it. It's one of those things that, yes, it's extremely important, and we will talk about it until the day that we finally have everybody in Appalachia, connected through broadband. However, it is not a 100% voting issue. It is great for the people who know it and want it and need it. You have to figure out something else for the others. And that's the problem. The older people in Appalachia, yes, they like internet. No, they don't really care as much about broadband. I hate to break it to the Democrats on this, but they do care about other things, specifically taxes, that Democrats missed in this election cycle. Because the entire time the Republicans controlled the narrative and said, hey, we don't want this bill to pass because it's going to raise your taxes, even though it wasn't true. The Democrats literally didn't answer it. They just said push, 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 because that's all they understand to do right now, because they're so scared about losing power and trying to push bills through, and they're still not good at that. It's incredible.
Well, and to your point on broadband, and Republicans have been actually running on broadband for a long time.
Yeah.
They beat the Democrats to the punch on it for years. The second thing I'll say is, to your point on taxes, you're right. And I don't know if I texted this to you or a different group thread on election night, but I was watching on TV the returns, or I was watching that day something else, and I saw the ads come up on my TV because I use YouTube TV, so I've got local ads. Glenn Youngkin, Republican candidate for governor, running literally, and I'm not even kidding, 5-second ads. He's in a grocery store. He says, if I'm elected, I'll repeal the tax on groceries. That's it. And like, if that's your takeaway, you're like, fuck taxes, fuck grocery taxes, bullshit, and I'll go vote for him. And honestly, you can't blame somebody for that in some respects because, like, if that's all you know about a candidate, why can't Democrats run on that? You know,
Why do you think I ran on ending the Social Security tax in West Virginia?
I
Because
do.
it's important. It's
Mm-hmm.
important. It's what people really want. They don't. Okay, look, this is what it kills me because, like I said, the people at the top only understand one word when it comes to infrastructure in Appalachia. Yeah, they understand potholes, whatever, but they don't actually understand what Appalachians want, need, or look for in a candidate. And that is what's missing. Go and pull any mailer. And if you live in Appalachia, pull a mailer from a Republican and a Democrat. Go through the Republican points one by one. I guarantee you that they are labeled towards Appalachians. Even if they're stereotypical, they are labeled towards Appalachians. Go look at a Democrats. They are generic bullet points that have been passed down from terrible generation of Democrats to terrible generation of Democrats. They don't understand that things have to be specific because when you run in an urban large area, you have to be as broad as possible. But when you run in a rural small area, you have to start getting specific. And guess what? Politicians are extremely scared of becoming specific because that shows their weaknesses. Because once they're asked a question about a very specific thing, they either have to put up or shut up. They have to know what they're talking about or look like an idiot. And most of the time, they don't know what they're talking about. They found bullet points on the internet or from the DNC or whatever, and they thought that that was going to be enough. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah. Ted. Yep. Nah, I mean, I think, well, the other thing is that most Democratic consultants fucking live in blue areas and they try to come into rural areas and pretend they know what they're doing. They don't. We could talk about this ad nauseum. I know we got to get off the subject, but I think we're both right and everybody else is wrong. There you go. Boom. Hot
Boom.
takes. That's what y'all come here for.
Also, last thing, if you're a Democratic politician in Appalachia right now, you're running for anything at all, and you think we're wrong, show me. Like, show me a candidate that doesn't have to get specific, doesn't have to get down and dirty and win on these subjects. Because I could tell you this right now in Appalachia, Democrats are not running against Republicans. They're running against the National Democratic, whatever, political action committee, the party itself, whatever. They have to prove that what they hear from the National Republican Party isn't what is true. The Republicans don't have to do that because guess what? They're really good at campaigning and they're really good at campaigning on the same stuff. Democrats are not. They're all over the place. They're very broad. Republicans aren't. They go after what wins. They're smart about it. And you see it. I mean, you're going to continue to see it.
They were smart enough to pick somebody in their convention rather than putting it up to their voters this time. That's why they got Glenn Youngkin and not some person who was a January 6th truther.
Yeah.
Like literally, that was how they did it. They did not have a primary; they had a convention vote. Anyway, yeah, I know we got to get off this, but yeah, we could talk about that ad nauseum. Maybe we will someday, but not right now. True that. All right, so let's get into what we're talking about today. Strikes giving. I think we struck that, so we're striking strikes giving. Strikes and Strike-A-Lachia. There you go. All right.
All right.
Okay, so if you've been living under a rock these past few weeks or really months and basically this whole year, 2021, year of the strike. So, look, I know that you and I have talked about this a lot, but man, workers are realizing their power and realizing their influence and exercising it, and we are fucking here for it. So, in the United States, all right, so this has been a wild year. Since the beginning of this year, there's been over 185 official strikes, official quote unquote, at 255 locations, with at least 40 of them happening last month in October. And this doesn't even count the labor protests, which didn't technically qualify as strikes. And there's been upwards of 554 of those separate ones this year. So you're talking about workers all throughout the country who are fed up with their employers giving them meager wages, taking away their health care, taking away their benefits, not sharing in on the prosperity that many of them have. And workers are doing something about it. I mean, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, look, and the good part about this is that look, I hate the internet a lot of days, right? Especially like Twitter. I don't like the negativity on there. But it also brings about some positive things. One of them being the ability to strike and get people to know about it. And not only to get people to know about it, but to support it. And that's what I really have been liking about Twitter is that I've noticed that, they'll create strike funds, and because of Twitter, because it goes viral, they're able to raise enough funds to keep going and to really, fight the good fight. Because without it, it's tough. I mean, a lot of those people are living paycheck to paycheck already, and then imagine it's gone. So I will say that's one of the positive things. I think this is only going to get even stronger in terms of strikes because of all of these employers, worrying or saying that they're worried about worker shortages. Prove it. Pay your people.
Yeah, and especially people that work in the retail industry, there's a lot of leverage around this time of year because you're getting into the holiday seasons where a lot of people are buying. There's already a supply chain issue, and then you got people who are going on strike. It puts the employers in a really tough position, which is good. They need to be in that in order to
Mm-hmm.
actually concede on a lot of things, and especially like with the strike funds and stuff. Just a little bit on that. I try to share as many as we come across, and
Yeah.
try to help amplify that as much. So if you have one that you want amplified on some of our social media channels, just let us know.
Let us know.
So I think it's important. We're not going to talk a ton about the details specifically here, but I think it's important to give some context to why this is happening. So there are record high levels of people resigning from their job, 3% of the entire US workforce, in fact, this year.
Wow.
Yeah, wild. Insane. It's the most since the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has started keeping record of it. So,
Dang.
yeah. So there's a shortage of workers accepting low wages. There's not a labor shortage. Uh so this
That's a good
in
way to put it.
Yeah, and thank you, I think, ABC News for that, because that's not an original thought from me. So if you take this and you combine it with stagnating wages, decades of it, and decades of income inequality, it's only gotten worse. And of course, the pandemic, which this is like a hobby horse for me in the sense of like complaining about this, because I feel like there's so many people whose jobs were not impacted by the pandemic or who were modestly impacted by the pandemic that just think like now everything is over, everything is going back to normal, when a lot of people who've lost their job or who were severely impacted by it are still recovering and will still be recovering for a really long time. And I feel like so many people, especially in Washington, especially around where I live, ignore that or don't realize that. They're like, oh, well, now I can go to my restaurant and not wear a mask. So the whole world is fucking fine. I can go to Le Diplomat and get a croque madame. And so I'm fine. So that must mean everybody else in the whole fucking world's fine. That's not true.
I wish I understood that reference.
You're welcome.
Um,
That's my coastal elite hat that I put on, but then also burned at the same time.
True. Uh,
That's a difficult dance.
that is tough. Yeah, I mean, look, I recently actually saw. We're seeing a lot of it in West Virginia, like the effect that this is happening, or this is having, because if you look at the growth in West Virginia, a lot of it is retail. So a lot of the jobs that are moving into the state, specifically in my area, are all retail, but they don't pay anything. So now you're starting to see some of the retail companies, or I guess you'd say like maybe even fast. What is Starbucks considered?
It's I think air quotes fast food. I mean,
Okay,
it's considered convenience food.
you're starting to see them do well in areas like mine, especially with workers because they do pay a little bit higher than the rest of the rest of the companies around here. You have like Chipotle, which is coming, which pays higher than any other fast food around here. You're starting to see that, but you're also seeing the opposite end where fast food restaurants like in Parkersburg are closing at 5 o'clock because they don't have enough people because people are tired of it. Why kill yourself? I heard a lyric in a song today that said, "If I'm gonna sell my soul, I better be paid for it." And I thought that that's work right there. Like that is the
Yeah.
definition of dedicating your life to something, giving your all, and then being told you're not worth $15 or whatever an hour.
Yeah. And even that's pathetic. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've got many stories of that for sure. It's it's awful, and I don't blame any of those people for not doing that and not wanting to do that. A couple of places just to mention that are trying to unionize that haven't yet: HelloFresh, the meal delivery service; Amazon again; Starbucks, like you mentioned, and Dollar General. But we're going to focus a little bit on some strikes that have been happening in Appalachia, because really Appalachia has been a very important place for this type of labor activity. And we've been saying this for a while, I mean, we've talked about, in fact, I was going to give an update on Warrior Met Coal and the United Mine Workers that are striking there down in Brookwood, Alabama. But we've been saying this for a while, that Appalachia has been a hotbed of labor activity, and in a good way. So a couple of months ago, I think in April or May, we did an episode on the United Mine Workers strike at Warrior Met Coal, a metallurgical coal mining company in Brookwood, Alabama, Appalachian, Alabama, close to Tuscaloosa. So right now they're still on strike. It's been 7 months and counting since that strike started, which is
Wow.
a really long time. And in
Yeah.
that time, like, there's been very little coverage of it, aside from some really intrepid reporters like Kim Kelly and more local reporters and excuse me, and media organizations like Valley Labor Report. But as far as it trickling into the mainstream media, it's been very few and far between. They're finally getting some coverage, some national news coverage, after their third visit to New York City to protest the hedge funds that fund Warrior Met Coal, and last week, I think 5 or 6 people, including the president of the United Mine Workers, Cecil Roberts, were arrested by New York City police for protesting. It's ridiculous. And it's still like, it takes that much effort just to get people to pay attention. But these miners have not been working for 7 months. 7 months.
Wow. I mean, and people take that for granted. That's the thing. And even I, like, sometimes I'm kind of like I don't know, how numb to that idea. Like, I'm like, oh, they're on strike, and then I don't put myself in their shoes and understand the real world implications of a strike. And now that it's like starting to ramp up even more, I started to think about that a lot more. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, my family could not go without me working for 7 months. It's just
No.
not possible. And so the fact that these people are putting it all on the line, one is something that should be applauded, but two, it also should show you how bad that company is,
Yeah.
because they've watched for 7 months as their employees, the people that they say they value, have struggled to make it by because they're refusing to pay them a livable wage, giving them good benefits and things like that. That's disgusting. And those are the type of companies that you can't support anymore. You just can't.
No, it makes me so angry. This is something that's like more personal to me, but like, it does make me really, really angry because, well, first of all, they're busing in scabs to take their jobs. People that are not as skilled as the people that work in that mine regularly, they bust them in every day. The company pays for it. They pay lots of money for it, in fact, what they could be paying their actual workers. And they have the local judges in their pockets. I don't know if you heard about this, but the Cecil Roberts was giving a speech about this in New York City. The local judges issued an injunction saying that they couldn't strike.
Wow.
Pretty fucking fundamental right. Uh, but it's ridiculous. Anyway, we did a whole episode on this. I don't want to get into it too much because there's a couple other really important strikes that we want to talk about. But one thing, and I know that this, I know that we talked about the toy drive, which is, I don't want this to contradict with that, but this is sort of a personal thing for me because my family was on strike for 5 months when I was in high school, and it lasted through Christmas. And I know it was different being a high schooler during Christmas than being a younger kid, but the United Mine Workers Auxiliary in Brookwood has set up a Christmas fund for the kids of the miners and the families to help fund for stuff to put under the Christmas tree. So obviously these miners are not getting paid. They're getting some money from the strike fund, but it's not a lot. And so like there's a lot of kids in these families who are not going to have a Christmas. And so one of the people that's a family member has set up a Target gift list, which I'll put a link to, where they have talked to the kids and they picked some stuff out. They put them on like the gift list on Target. You can go on there and you can buy them. I went and I bought a race car set, and it had it shipped to Brookwood just the other day. So that was really cool. And they're trying to fill all those orders before Christmas so those kids can have something under the tree. Because if you're a little kid, you're probably not going to really understand what's going on, and you still want to have a good Christmas. And these families want to provide that for their kids while also standing up for their rights and for what they believe in. So I'm going to do a quick plug for that. I know that we're doing some other stuff too, but if you want to donate to that and buy some toys for some kids, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and it's something that needs to happen. And who knows? I mean, maybe the kids that are going through this and that Christmas fund will be able to have access to whatever organization we donate to, which we will announce. We'll be fully transparent. It's not like we're not going to. It's just honestly trying to figure out the best way to do it and location wise, because we want a lot of people to benefit. We just have to figure it out because we're not located right in the heart of Appalachia.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, let's talk about some other really important strikes that are happening in Appalachia. Then let's talk about why Democrats aren't doing enough to support them. Does that sound like fun?
Sure.
Or whatever. Why politicians? Let me just rephrase it.
Yeah,
Why
maybe all of them.
politicians? Why politicians? Yeah, because we don't want to like leave the Republicans off the hook on this. So a couple of other ones, and I've got a couple of details on here. We're not going to go into super detail. We'll link to some stuff so you'll know. Cabell Huntington Hospital, we've been in touch with some people at the local SEIU there. They recently, their maintenance workers and service workers, about 1,000 of them went on strike. I believe it was last Wednesday when you're hearing this. So the first week in November. And they're going on strike because of their benefits and trying to negotiate a better contract. I thought that this quote from a worker there was really telling. A guy named Tom Dyer, this is from a local news source. Tom has worked at the hospital for over 30 years, and he said, quote, during my 32-year tenure, it seems like every year we lose benefit after benefit. They take and they take and they take. And boy, if that's not true for almost every single one of these.
Yeah. And we have over the course, the history of the United States, we have created a precedent that says it welcomes with open arms employers taking. That is what we have established as the norm and as okay.
Capitalism, baby.
And when workers say, wait a second, it's our turn, they're looked at as like, being unloyal to your employer and yada, yada. Let's make one thing clear.
Fuck that.
An employer-employee relationship is just that.
That's two for me.
That's it. That's all that is. This idea of loyalty is great, right? But if they're not treating you with how you think you should be treated or how you should be treated, they're not paying you. They're not valuing you. That's not loyalty, because they're not being loyal to you either. And that's why I hate this. Like this idea that there's this like full loyalty between employer and employee. It's not true. It's an entity and you're a person. There is no loyalty. Yes, you can work at a place for a long time, but I think now people are starting to realize that this false identity of loyalty to one employer while they treat you badly isn't real. And that is what you're starting to see across the country.
At its very core, being an employee is a transactional relationship.
100%.
That's it. And that's what it should be. There's look, and it's fine to like where you work. That's good. That's great.
That's great.
That's fucking awesome.
That's what you should be looking for. That's your third one. That's what you should be.
I'm gonna cut one of them. I need another fuck for later. So
that's 4. That's kidding. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, it is just transactional, and if you love where you work and you want to stay there, that's great. That's the point that I'm trying to make, is that you should be working at a place like that values you, and then you can reciprocate that value. However, if they're not, people now are starting to learn that they can take their value elsewhere and find it.
Which is fantastic, because that's how it should
be.
There has to be a balance, because for too long, the corporations and the employers, not necessarily mutually exclusive, have had all the power and have had all the leverage. And 100%. It's because your livelihood relies on this and you can't afford to quit your job. That's why collective action, like strikes, are so important and so essential, and it's essential that everybody be part of it. Yeah. So that was Cabell Huntington. I don't. There's not a lot of details that we want to really talk about right now because it's just getting going, and there's not a lot of details that have been made public or that we can talk about. But there's another strike that's been happening for a while in the same town of Huntington, West Virginia. It's Special Metals. Special Metals is the largest nickel alloy plant in the world, owned by, you betcha, a billionaire, Warren Buffett, who everybody loves to say that he wants to be taxed more. Well, tax him more, but also don't let him off the hook for bullshit. Special Metals produces alloys critical to military jet engines, commercial aircraft, deep sea oil rigs, etc. Just give you a little bit of context there. It's a very important business, very important workers. 450 of them began striking October 1st. So it's been over a month, about 37, 38 days at this point. 39, I can't do math. After the union failed to reach a new collective bargaining agreement. And on day 30, and as of today, there's no end in sight. And so the members of the United Steelworkers Local 40 are trying to negotiate a new contract and trying to negotiate better benefits, but they're not seeing any give from the employer from what we can tell. So that just in Huntington, West Virginia, John, if you're keeping track, that's at least 1,450 people on strike.
Wow. Incredible.
That's a lot.
Incredible. Yeah.
Huntington ain't that big.
No, it's not. That's the thing. Like, and the weird thing is too, Huntington. Actually, I just saw Mayor Williams. Is that his name? Yeah, I think it is.
I don't know.
Like a month or Steve Williams, I think. Yeah. Like a month or two ago, and he was talking about how much progress Huntington has made, and it's true. Like Huntington has made a ton of progress. Like from where it was 6 years ago, 4 years ago to where it is now, it's great. Like in terms of what they've been able to do. However, we're now still seeing, and Huntington can't control this, but when things like this happen, especially in West Virginia and in bigger cities in West Virginia, we have seen the ability for these employees to have a mass exodus to go elsewhere. And then West Virginia, that city, Huntington, for instance, loses population and doesn't regain it. And if you think I'm bullshitting you, go look up anytime Huntington's numbers or Charleston's numbers or Parkersburg's numbers have fallen and look at the correlation between what has happened with a specific employer, specifically a big one. It's things like that. So these are not just bad for the company or just bad for the people working there. It's bad for the community in general. That's what I think makes me so angry about this stuff, is that these companies don't care about their employers or don't care about their employees. They also don't care about the communities that they're in.
Yeah, hell, I mean, it's easy for somebody to just, go across the river, get another job somewhere in Kentucky at this point. And it's true. There in Huntington, I'm just looking at this. I did not realize this at all, but this is wild. Their population has been in decline since 1960s.
Man, it's almost like I'm right.
Yeah. They had a population of 83,000 since the 50s. They had a population of 86,000 in 1950, and it is down to 46,000 from the 2020 census. That is wild. Mm-hmm. It's half. They lost half their population in 60, 70 years.
Yep.
Whew, boy, that's tough. That is bad. Well, okay, so I wanted to get out of West Virginia for this last strike because I thought this was pretty important, and then we'll kind of talk about what this all means. So the Erie Strayer Company in Erie, Pennsylvania, PA. We're going to PA right now. Erie Strayer, they supply concrete batching equipment to construction ready mix companies. Extremely important, especially right now when you think about the supply chain issues and the construction delays right now. It's a hugely important company. A little bit smaller, but of a workforce that's on strike, but equally important. 42 union workers walked off the job on October 4th, so a little over a month. This is why I wanted to bring this up, because we got some details about the contract negotiation on this, and it's ridiculous. So, John, the union, and this is not at all unusual, the union proposed a 3-year contract that would provide raises of 60 cents an hour in the first year, followed by 50-cent raises in the next 2 years. as well as a dental plan and back pay. I think from April for a reason which was not immediately clear. Anyway, the focus being on the wage raises, 60 cents and then 50 cents. Like that's a decent raise, but it's really not that much when you consider how like inflation has fluctuated over the years. And so the company, of course, John, instead of accepting that, countered with 5 cents and then 15 cents the next year. That is just insulting. That is insulting. There's no other word for it.
Holy crap.
And that is why people strike.
100%. And guess what? The people who are against unions, one, they don't really actually understand unions. And two, they tend to be people who own companies. And do you want to know why? Because unions terrify employers. Why? Because it allows employees to be on a closer step in terms of a power dynamic, and they hate that. They
Cost them
hate
more money.
They hate that they have the ability to negotiate. They hate that they have the ability to ask for better things. They hate that they have to treat people right. They just hate it. That's why unions are so important. And that is why you're going to continue to see a union, I think, a big union movement in terms of organizations. Yes, there's going to be several that are blocked. We saw that with Amazon. We're going to see it with other major companies. However, you're going to see more unions in places that you don't normally think of. That's my projection going into 2022 and into 2023 and 2024. You are going to start seeing more workers band together, create unions, and create change. I'm calling it now.
I even think that Amazon, I think they're eventually going to be able to get a union vote, because since they had the vote in Bessemer that ended up failing, one, I believe they're resurging another effort, and it's backed by the Teamsters this time. The Teamsters are putting in a lot of money and resources into it, and they're a very powerful union. And I think, to bookend your point, that there is going to be an uptick in union membership, and I think an uptick in union power, which I think will ultimately be a really good thing. I hope. And I hope that we see that. I think we're starting to see it right now, and unions are starting to get more money and more membership, which is really good. They just have to manage that growth, which is always, it's difficulty, but I'm sure that they will. One last thing on the Erie Stray, then we can move into sort of discussion here. I did want to put this quote in here because it's really emblematic of pretty much every employee, and it definitely reminds me of my dad and the people that he worked with. It's the sentiment that they had. This guy, Phil Brown, 59 years old, worked at the Erie Strayer Company, still works there for 36 years. Currently a prefabrication group leader. Not sure what that is, but sounds important. Said, quote, "I thought I would retire out of this place, but it doesn't look like it right now. They're telling me and my coworkers we're not worth a damn nickel to them." And that was literal, like literally not worth
literal. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's shameful. It really is. But one other thing that's shameful is the lack of attention being brought to these strikes, particularly on people in power, such as our elected officials, John. Most of them, at least most in the United States Senate, have been completely quiet about this. I will give credit a little bit here. I want to give credit to John Fetterman, who's running for United States Senate, Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. He actually went to the Erie Strayer Company picket line, went and visited the workers there. Sherrod Brown, friend of the show, Sherrod Brown, United States Senator from Ohio. Him and Tim Ryan, other friend of the show, have visited numerous strikes throughout Ohio that have been happening. So credit to them. If there's others that I missed, please let me know. But we need more elected representatives, particularly, hint, hint, Democrats, because you say you're the party of the working class, so fucking prove it. That is a fuck I'm keeping in. By showing up for these people, because take the hint, this is a huge movement. And there's obviously something happening in the bluest parts of the country to the reddest parts of the country. Something is happening. And from what I can tell, especially at the national level, they ain't giving them shit for attention.
Yeah. I mean, no one is. That's what the
Bullshit.
thing is. Like Democrats have run on this we're pro worker agenda for 50 years now, and continue to prove that they don't they're exactly what they say they're not. They're not pro workers. They're pro company. They're pro big business. They always have been. They always will be until there's massive change. The only difference right now between Democrats and Republicans is that they sit on different sides of the aisle. That's it. They're not proving a huge difference when it comes to unions. They're just not. And they're not going. Now you do have some. John Fetterman, obviously. You're seeing Charles Booker is going to go out there. He's going to talk to people. But we need to see real change, not just going and shaking hands. That's great, right? But there has to be action with it too. So I look forward to seeing these guys, these politicians go out, shake hands, kiss babies, do whatever they have to do. Hopefully not kiss babies, COVID. But I also want to see them create a real plan to fix some of these issues before they're even elected. I want to see it. Because that's what real politicians should do.
They should, and they should do things like pass the PRO Act that actually empowers workers and gives them a stake at the table. They should be doing things that actually makes a difference for workers. And there are some that are trying to. I mean, the social spending bill, whatever the fuck you want to call it, would be a very pro-worker, pro-family bill in its essence. Who knows what the hell is going to end up passing, if anything. But I think that's the thing, is like, you can give all the lip service you want, but lip service is only one thing, and that's lip service. If it's not matched with action, it's not worth shit. All right. And there are some people out there doing something. They're at least showing their faces, which is good. And look, I mean, we'll criticize any politician no matter how much we like them or we respect them. But there are some out there that are doing more. And I think they're taking the hint. Look, I think that people like Tim Ryan, they're taking this hint. I've seen a huge uptick from him on his social media of where he's going out to these different strike sites and meeting with workers and tweeting about it and posting about it and talking about it and doing events about it and doing press clips about it. And that's good. That's exactly what anybody who says they're for the working class should do. Because if you say you're for the working class, but you're not showing up for these workers, then you're not. It is actually that simple. I know that I say on the show all the time that most things in life aren't that simple, that there's some nuance, that there's some complex things to this, but for something like this, it's that simple.
Yeah. The proof is in the pudding, and right now the Democrats ain't got no pudding.
No pudding. But it's very easy for them to get some pudding if they just go to the store. The store being the workers. There you go.
Also, the
tired
store
metaphor
is union.
Yeah, it should be a UFCW store, United Food and Commercial Workers. Don't go to those non-union stores.
7th Street Kroger.
Yeah, that's right. 7th Street Kroger. That's right. Yeah. Or the Harris Teeter on Ruston Boulevard. There you go. Well, I think that's where we'll probably end it. I mean, I think we've said what we need to say, right? You think so?
Yep.
All right. You're always good to end it. You're always chomping at the bit. So let's get it done.
Chomping at the bit. I'm not chomping at the bit. I just think we crushed it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Don't get defensive. Ease up on the saddle there, Charlie Horse.
I'm offensive, not defensive.
Well, that's what the whole next segment is about. So there you go.
Nice.
It's a great lead into our next segment, our last segment, the one that we've done pretty much every single show, probably 106 times at this point. The beef segment. They call him the big bird of beef. How's that for alliteration? Much like the bright yellow anthropomorphic bird, he too has been the subject of right-wing screeds for simply being a good public servant. He's come prepared with a booster shot of beef for you to take straight to the vein. Beef with Big John.
If you bothered by heat, back up out the grill. My boy Big John's finna fix you up a meal. Yeah, you brought the rules, that's a big deal. Got your mouth full, but it don't matter still. Y'all want some beef with Big John, but at the same time, don't you beef with Big John. Trying to be the man, but you sweet when it's time. Open up wide, it'll leave till it's gone. Eat your beef with Big John. Eat your beef with Big John. This is beef with Big John. Y'all got beef with Big John.
I didn't even
That
know
was
about your
pretty-
booster shot when I wrote that.
I know that's pretty good. Like in terms of being able to put that in.
The amount of bees in that, like, I'd probably spit all over my thing.
Okay. I thought about this for a little while, and I wanted to talk about it because I already talked about it a little bit in the show. This week, and again, this is something that I used to be guilty of, but I've made sure that I'm not anymore. And that is, once again, in the news, Chuck, no matter what happens, when Joe Manchin or really Rand Paul or McConnell or anybody's in the news for something that, specifically, something that people on the left disagree with, it automatically becomes more than that person's opinion in terms of Joe Manchin or Rand Paul or Mitch McConnell. It becomes now everybody who lives in Appalachia has to agree with what Joe Manchin does. So they stop blaming Joe Manchin. They start blaming an entire region of people. They stop blaming Mitch McConnell. They start blaming Kentucky. This continues to happen. And here's what makes me so angry about it. You don't see it anywhere else, right? There are times when, yes, California gets grouped as liberal or New York, but you don't see this automatic movement from blaming a politician to hunting down every person that lives in that region. It's Appalachia specific, and it's so old by now. I don't understand why this continues to keep happening. And the big thing is, the majority of it is happening from the left. The left is honestly the most vicious about it, which to me is infuriating because the entire time the left should be trying to come into Appalachia and say, we're with you. We agree with, certain things. This is how we really feel, and try to win people over. But that's not the left's policy anymore. And that's what's upsetting me. They come in and instead yell and scream and say how dumb the person is for voting for a certain person. And that's not how you're going to get people to join your movement. It's just not.
Oh, it's not? Shit, I have to revise my entire I got to stop telling people to go fuck themselves and vote like me because I know things because I live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Shit.
I mean, it's just one of those things that doesn't win. And in fact, that causes any good candidate in that area to lose automatically because they no longer care what that person actually said or what they stand for. They just know the letter next to their name and they know how bad you treated them. So they are no longer a viable candidate. So in fact, not only you're doing a disservice to the party, you're doing a disservice to anybody that actually wants to make change in Appalachia. It's just true. It's your fault. Stop doing these things. I don't care if you live in Appalachia or you live outside of it and you just make these massive assumptions that only hurt people in the region. You don't win by doing that. And I understand that the left is extremely frustrated where that Appalachia is. We are too. Everyone who doesn't agree with what's happening is extremely frustrated. But it's kind of like, I guess the best way to put it is it's kind of like kickball, right? Mm-hmm. In order to become the pitcher, you didn't punch your gym teacher.
Speak for yourself.
I didn't punch my gym teacher.
I established dominance, but go ahead.
I waited my turn. I asked. I was able to then become pitcher. I did it the right way.
All right. Okay.
That's not what is going on, right? They just come in and punch right now, the left. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
You have to establish the ability to one, understand the people you're talking to, because I guarantee a lot of them don't. No. And you then have to create a narrative that you can actually have a discussion about rather than screaming or posting in all caps and blaming, posting these really stereotypical things. Because I can promise you this, you're going to just continue to lose people and they're going to be salty. You're never going to get the region back. And it is forever going to be the fault of those people.
I mean, I know I've said this twice already on the show, but if your opinion is simple enough to fit into a tweet when it's about a region like Appalachia, then that's the wrong opinion. It's not. It's bullshit. Yep. Things are more complicated than one United States senator from West Virginia, all right?
Or from Kentucky, or from, wherever.
Right. it doesn't matter where they're from. My point being that like people do this not because I this is my opinion. I think people do that not a lot of times not because they actually think that, but because it's a performance. Social media is a performance for most people, and it's performative, and they know that if I do something like this and I say, well, fuck Jim Manchin, blah, blah,
I'll get
blah, and
likes.
that's just all about Appalachia, the stupid fucking hillbillies, keep saying fuck, these stupid hillbillies, then I'll get some likes and retweets, and maybe it will help me get subscribers to my newsletter, Amy Siskind. And that's but that's what people think. And honestly, the sad part is it works. And
They're right.
we
It's
have
100%.
to, yeah, it works. All right. And like look, we know that. And that's kind of one of the things that has to change. It's not like the most important thing, but it's one of them because this shit's more complicated than that. And it's like, come to the region, you'll find out it's way more fucking complicated. There's also a lot of people here that aren't happy at all.
Another F word.
All right. Okay. Just, the fuck police over here. My self-imposed limit is dying on the vine.
Yeah.
But luckily, I edit this so I can say however many fucks I want and then get rid of all of them.
True. Look, I'm sure I've had a beef similar to this. Actually, I know I have because I can remember saying some of these things. But it needs to be said again because as we continue to kind of move closer, especially to that 2022 election, these are going to continue happening. And no matter what you may think about an area, I could tell you it's far more complicated than that. That's not how this works. So just give it a chance. That's all I'm saying.
And just listen. Don't talk. Don't tweet. Just listen. Preferably does. JK. Plug. Yeah, that's good beef. It's a hearty beef. One that, you gotta cook it for a while, but it goes down well. Paired with a nice wine, which may be what I'll get after this, and I have to edit this. But that being said, thank you for that. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. We'll see you.